I always hated these office parties. The forced smiles, the shallow conversations, the way everyone pretended they weren't gossiping behind each other's backs. But every year my wife Lauren made it clear that my presence was non-negotiable. "This is important for my career, Lyle," she'd say. "You don't have to stay long, but you need to be there." So, as always, I put on an iron button-up, combed my hair, and walked into a place where I never truly belonged. The venue was upscale, modern chandelier, sleek glass walls, and a polished hardwood floor that reflected the glow of city lights through the towering windows. The jazz band played softly in the background, drowned out by the clinking of glasses and murmured conversations. Lauren looked stunning in a fitted black dress, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders. She was confident, poised, and completely in her element. I grabbed a drink and stayed close to the edges of the room, observing rather than participating. I had learned that these gatherings were more about appearances than actual enjoyment. Lauren, on the other hand, thrived in this environment. She laughed effortlessly, charmed her coworkers, and carried herself like someone meant to be admired. Then I saw him, tall, broad-shouldered and dressed in a sleek navy suit. He was younger than me, maybe early 30s, with a perfect smile that looked too polished to be real. Lauren was talking to him too closely. She had that look in her eyes, the one she used to give me when we first met, the one that made me feel like the only man in the world. But I wasn't the only man anymore. They moved toward me, Lauren's hand grazing his arm. As they walked, my stomach tightened. I told myself I was imagining things, that she was just being friendly. But deep down, I already knew the truth. "Lyle," she said with a bright smile, "this is Carter. He's one of our senior analysts." Carter extended his hand, and I shook it, feeling the strength in his grip. He wasn't just some coworker. He knew who I was. And then he looked at me. It wasn't just a glance. It was the kind of look a man gives another man when he thinks he has something over him. It was subtle but unmistakable. An edge of amusement, a flicker of knowing arrogance. My chest tightened. I wanted to believe I was misreading the situation, that I was being paranoid. But Lauren's body language told me everything. The way she angled herself toward him, the slight blush on her cheeks, the effortless way they fit into each other's space. I forced a polite smile. "Nice to meet you." Carter smirked. "Lorene talks about you all the time." It sounded like a compliment. It wasn't a strange coldness spread through my veins. My own wife had introduced me to a man who clearly wasn't just a colleague. She looked so at ease, so completely unaware of how much that moment was gutting me. Or maybe she was aware, and she just didn't care. I downed the rest of my drink, but it didn't dull the sinking feeling inside me, because at that moment I knew this wasn't just an office party. This was something else entirely, and I wasn't sure I was ready to find out what the rest of the night blurred into a mess of meaningless small talk, forced laughter, and the clinking of expensive glasses. But all I could focus on with them, Lauren and Carter. I didn't need to be a detective to see it. I saw it in the way her eyes lingered on his face a little too long, in the way her fingers touched his wrist when she spoke, in the effortless rhythm of their conversation. Like two people who had already crossed a line but weren't ready to admit it. I tried to rationalize. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe I was tired, overthinking, being insecure. But then Carter turned to her mid-con conversation, leaned in slightly, and whispered something that made her giggle. She giggled. Lori never giggled with me anymore. Something twisted inside my chest. I had spent years supporting her, making sacrifices so she could thrive in her career, always standing in the background while she climbed higher. I never complained when she worked late, when she went on business trips, when she said she was too tired for intimacy. I had convinced myself that this was just how marriage evolved, that love changed over time, that it wasn't supposed to be like the movies. But what if I was wrong? What if I had been a fool this entire time? I needed air. I set my empty glass on the nearest table and made my way to the balcony. The cold night air hit me like a slap, but it was exactly what I needed. I gripped the railing, staring at the city below. People moved like ants on the streets, living their lives unaware that mine was falling apart. A voice behind me cut through my thoughts. "You okay, man, Carter?" I clenched my jaw before turning to face him. He was standing in the doorway, hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. He was confident, too confident. It wasn't just arrogance. It was the kind of ease that came from knowing something someone else didn't. "I'm fine," I lied. He chuckled. Didn't seem like it in there. I forced a smile, but I knew. It didn't reach my eyes, just needed some fresh air. He nodded, stepping closer. "Lauren told me a lot about you." That sick feeling turned. She did. "Yeah," he said, watching me closely. "Said you were a great husband, hardworking, reliable." The words should have been a compliment, but there was something in the way. He said them reliable, like I was some old appliance, dependable but replaceable. I exhaled slowly. "That's good to hear." Carter smirked, then glanced back at the party inside through the glass doors. I saw Lauren still mingling, completely unaware of our conversation. Or maybe she was aware and didn't care. "Greater than got a good thing going," he said, his voice light, casual. "Sheck, an amazing woman." A pulse of anger flickered in my gut. I turned fully to him, keeping my expression neutral. "Yeah, she is." Carter studied me for a moment, like he was deciding whether to say something else. Then he clapped a hand on my shoulder. Too firm, too familiar. "See you around, Lyle." And just like that, he walked back inside. I stood there for a long time staring at my reflection in the glass. Something was happening, something I hadn't seen before. And for the first time in my marriage, I felt like an outsider in my own life. I don't remember much of the drive home. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, but my mind was somewhere else. The moment Carter had placed his hand on my shoulder, something had shifted inside me, something dark and unfamiliar. I wasn't the type to jump to conclusions. I never wanted to be that jealous, paranoid husband who saw betrayal in every interaction. But this wasn't some innocent misunderstanding. I had seen the way Lauren looked at him. I had felt the smugness radiating off Carter like he knew something I didn't. By the time we pulled into the driveway, the silence between us had thickened. Lauren unbuckled her seat, Belle exhaling as she glanced at me. "You've been quiet," she said. I forced my hands to relax on the wheel. "Just tired." She studied me for a second too long, then nodded. "The party was fun, wasn't it?" I didn't answer, because fun wasn't the word I'd used to describe. Watching my wife flirt with another man in plain sight. Lauren grabbed her purse and stepped out of the car. I followed, locking the doors. As she made her way up the porch steps, she walked with the same effortless confidence she always had, like nothing was out of place, like tonight hadn't shaken the foundation of our marriage inside. She kicked off her heels and stretched. "I need a shower," she murmured, running a hand through her dark hair. "You coming?" I hesitated. It was a simple question, one that months ago I would have answered without a second thought. But now, "No," I said. "I think I'll stay up a little longer." She shrugged. "Suit yourself." Then she disappeared into the bathroom, closing the door behind her. I stood in the dimly lit hallway, my heart pounding. The house suddenly felt too quiet, too empty, like the echoes of something I had lost were pressing against the walls. I needed to know the truth. Walking to the kitchen, I pulled out my phone and opened Lauren's messages. I had never checked her phone before. We trusted each other, or at least, I had trusted her. But trust wasn't something you clung to blindly. When all the signs were there, flashing red, my fingers hovered over her recent texts. There was nothing suspicious at first glance, just messages from coworkers, friends, a few from me. But then I sought his name, Carter. I clicked on the thread. Most of the messages were casual, work-related, surface level. But as I scrolled further, the tone shifted. "Lauren, you always know how to make me laugh, Carter." "That's because I know you better than you think, Lauren." "You're troubled, Carter." "Carter, you like a little trouble, don't you?" I gripped the phone so tightly my fingers ache and my stomach twists. This wasn't just office banter, this was something deeper, something dangerous. I kept scrolling, and then the message that made my breath catch. "Carter, you looked amazing tonight. I couldn't stop staring, Lauren. I noticed you weren't exactly subtle, Carter. Neither were you, My pulse roared in my ears. I had suspected I had seen the way they looked at each other, but reading it, seeing the proof spelled out in black and white, felt like a knife twisting in my ribs. I looked toward the hallway, where the faint sound of running water drifted from the bathroom. Lauren was in there, completely unaware that I had just unraveled everything. A million thoughts raced through my mind. Should I confront her now? Demand an explanation? Shout, scream, accuse? No, not yet. I needed more. Because if she was lying to me about this, there was no telling what else she was hiding. And I wasn't going to let her slip away without knowing the full truth. I stood there, in the dimly lit kitchen, my heart pounding in my ears as my grip tightened around the phone. My eyes kept scanning the screen, reading and rereading those messages as if doing so would somehow change the words in front of me. But they didn't change. They were there clear as day, flirting, teasing something beneath the surface that neither of them had tried to hide. I exhaled sharply and set the phone down on the counter, rubbing a hand over my face. My mind was racing. Was this an affair? Had it crossed the line, or was this just the prelude to something worse? I needed answers, but more than that, I needed to be sure before I acted. From down the hall, I could still hear the shower running, the water hitting the tile, the faint sound of Lauren humming, like she wasn't even aware of the fire she had set inside me. Like everything was just fine. I wasn't going to confront her yet, not until I had something solid. Instead, I picked up my phone again, opened my own messages, and scrolled through my contacts until I found the one I needed. Adam, my oldest friend. The one person I trusted more than anyone in the world. I hesitated for a moment, then typed out a quick message. "Me. I need a favor. Can you talk?" It was late, but within seconds the typing bubbles appeared. "Adam? Yeah, what's up?" "Me. I think Lauren is cheating on me." A pause, then. "Adam. Are you sure?" "Me. Not 100%, but I have a bad feeling, and I found messages. I need to know for sure before I do something stupid." Another pause. "Adam, you want me to look into it?" "Me. Yeah, I need to know everything." Adam worked in security surveillance. It wasn't exactly legal, but he had his ways of getting information, ways that I had never thought I'd need. "Adam, I'll start tomorrow. But you sure you want to go down this road, me?" "I don't have a choice." I sent the message and locked my phone just as the water shut off. Footsteps padded down the hall, and a moment later, Lauren appeared in the doorway. Her wet hair draped over her shoulders, and she wore one of my old t-shirts, her bare legs still damp from the shower. She looked at me with tired eyes, a soft smile on her lips. "You coming to bed?" she asked. I forced a smile. "In a minute." She nodded, stretching her arms over her head. "Okay, don't stay up too late." And just like that, she disappeared into the bedroom like nothing had changed. Changed, but for me, everything had. The next day I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing. Adam. I slipped out of bed quietly, careful not to wake Lauren, and stepped into the hallway before answering. "Yeah," I whispered. I ran a quick check. Adam said, his voice low. "Carter, Heehan's clean, no criminal record, no shady history. But I did find something interesting." I clenched my jaw. "What?" Adam sighed. "This isn't the first time." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean?" "There's a pattern," Adam said. I dug into some old office gossip. Carter has a reputation. Heehan's been involved with at least 2 other married women in the company. Both times it ended the same way. Their marriages collapsed and he moved on to someone else. I gripped the phone tighter, Lyle. Adam continued, his voice cautious. "I don't think he's just flirting with Lauren. I think he's working his way in." A heavy silence filled the space between us. I swallowed hard. "Can you get proof?" "I can try," Adam said, "but you need to be prepared. If this is real, you're not going to like what you find." I already didn't like what I'd found, but I needed to see it with my own eyes. "Do whatever you have to," I said, "just give me the truth." And with that, I hung up, standing in the hallway, staring at the closed bedroom door. Inside, my wife was still asleep, peaceful, dreaming, but I wasn't sure if I even knew the woman lying next to me anymore. I sat at the kitchen table, my fingers tapping absently against my coffee cup. The house was still quiet. Lauren was still asleep. Unaware that I was already steps ahead of her, I had barely slept. My mind kept replaying the way Carter had looked at me. The messages, Adam's warning. This isn't the first time that sentence rang in my head like a siren. It wasn't just about Laureen anymore. Carter had done this before, played the part, charmed, lured, and then destroyed. And my wife. Was she just another one of his easy targets, or was she a willing participant waiting for the right moment to pull the rug from under me? I wasn't waiting to find out. Adam had set up a plan. He was going to follow them, see if anything happened outside of work. I had given him permission to check her phone. If an opportunity presented itself, and if I was willing, I could install a tracker on her car. I wasn't sure if I was ready for that. The thought of actively spying on my own wife made me feel sick. But then I thought of her smiling at him, of the way she touched his wrist, of the giggle she gave him that I hadn't heard in years. And just like that, my hesitation was gone. I grabbed my keys and left the house without a word. At the auto shop, I felt like I was signing a deal with the devil. The guy at the counter barely blinked when I asked for a discreet tracking device. He just nodded, took my money, and handed over a small nondescript box. "You need help installing it?" he asked. "No," I said, gripping the box tightly. "I've got it." And I did. When I got home, Lauren's car was still parked in the driveway. She was inside, probably drinking coffee, probably, texting Carter. My hand shook slightly as I knelt down and placed the tracker under her bumper. It took less than 5 minutes. Then I stood up, wiped my hands on my jeans, and walked inside like I hadn't just crossed a line. I never thought I'd cross. Lauren barely looked up when I entered the kitchen. "Where'd you go?" she asked, scrolling through her phone. Just for a drive, I said casually. Needed some air. She hummed in response, sipping her coffee. I watched her fingers move across the screen, the little smirk on her lips as she typed something. My chest burned. I sat down across from her, forcing myself to sound normal, busy morning. She glanced up, just catching up on messages. I nodded, gripping my coffee cup a little tighter. Work stuff. She hesitated for just a fraction of a second. Then she smiled. Yeah, work stuff, liar. I swallowed down the bitterness rising in my throat. She didn't know I was watching her now. She didn't know that the next time she left this house, I'd know exactly where she was going. And when the truth finally revealed itself, she wouldn't be able to lie her way out of it anymore. I sat in my car across the street from her office building, watching. I told myself I wasn't here to catch her in the ACT. I wasn't here to prove anything. I was just observing. But deep down, I already knew that was a lie. The tracking app on my phone showed a blinking dot, Lauren's car, right where it was supposed to be. She was still at work. Everything looked normal. Everything was fine, except nothing was fine. I watched as people came and went from the building's entrance, dressed in their stiff office attire, balancing coffee cups and work bags, their conversations blending into the city noise. Then, at exactly p.m., she walked out. Lauren, she was smiling. Not just a polite smile, a real one, the kind that used to be reserved for me. My grip on the steering wheel tightened as Carter appeared beside her. He said something and she laughed, touching his arm in that casual way. She thought no one would notice. She never even looked around to see if I was there. I forced myself to breathe, watching them together standing so close, acting like nothing was wrong. It made my stomach twist in ways I didn't know were possible. Then something happened that I wasn't prepared for. She didn't go to her car. Instead, she followed Carter to his. I watched as he unlocked the door as she slid into the passenger seat like she had done it 100 times before. No hesitation, no second thoughts. The tracking app updated the blinking dots, started moving. I didn't even think. I just started my car and followed. They drove for about 20 minutes, heading away from downtown and into a quieter part of the city. I kept my distance hard, hammering in my chest, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I told myself I was prepared for this, that I already knew what I was about to find. But nothing could have prepared me for where they actually stopped. A hotel, not some fancy high-end place. A discreet, forgettable, out-of-the-way kind of hotel. The kind when no one asked questions. My stomach dropped. I pulled into a parking space, far enough away that I wouldn't be noticed, but close enough to see them. Carter parked, got out, and walked around to Lauren's side. She stepped out, her face still carrying that same damn smile. He said something that made her laugh again, and then he let her inside like it was the most natural thing in the world, like she hadn't just ripped out my heart and tossed it onto the pavement. I sat there ripping the steering wheel, staring at the doors they had just disappeared through. My entire body felt numb, my head was spinning, my chest felt like it was caving in, and for the first time in my life, I had no idea what to do. I could storm inside, I could confront them, I could make a scene, demand answers, watch the guilt spread across her face. But something inside me stopped. Because what would that accomplish? She had already made her choice. I had been fooling myself into thinking I needed more proof, that I needed to catch her in the act before I could accept the truth. But the truth had been staring me in the face for weeks. I had just refused to see it. And now here I was sitting alone in a dark parking lot, watching the woman I loved walk into a hotel with another man. I felt sick. I rested my head against the steering wheel, trying to keep my breathing steady. My mind was racing with everything that had led up to this moment. Every little lie, every excuse, every night. She had come home late and kissed me like nothing was wrong. And then finally a single thought cut through the chaos. This marriage was over. I wasn't going to fight for someone who had already left me behind. And I wasn't going to let her walk away from this without consequences. I just didn't know what those consequences would be yet. But I was going to find out. I didn't move. For a long time I sat in my car, gripping the wheel, staring at the hotel entrance, like I could somehow will her to walk back out and tell me this was all some misunderstanding. But she didn't. She was in there with him and I was outside alone. I had spent the last decade believing Lauren was my partner, my best friend, the person who had my back no matter what. And yet here I was, parked outside a cheap hotel, watching my wife disappear into another man's arms. The betrayal sat in my chest like a weight pressing down harder with each second that passed. But beneath all the anger, the sadness, the disbelief, there was something else. A cold, undeniable clarity. I had been blind for weeks, maybe even months. I had ignored the signs, the late nights, the distant looks, the way she always seemed to be somewhere else when we were together. I had told myself it was just stress, that we were in a rough patch, that we'd figure it out. But now I knew the truth. She had already checked out of our marriage. She just hadn't bothered to tell me. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Adam. I picked up my voice. Hollow. Yeah, she's in there. I swallowed hard. Yeah. A pause then. What do you want to do? That was the question, wasn't it? Well, was I going to storm in and drag her out, humiliate her in front of him, in front of strangers? That wasn't me. I wasn't some hot-headed idiot who acted on impulse. No. I needed something better, something final, something she wouldn't see coming. I exhaled slowly. I need proof. Adam didn't hesitate. I can get that. I rubbed a hand over my face, the exhaustion settling in how. I have a friend who works security at that hotel. Adam said he can get the footage. Camera timestamps, check-in records, the whole thing. I closed my eyes. Do it. You sure, man? I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. Yeah. Another pause. And after that, I didn't answer right away because I didn't know. What did you do when you realized your entire marriage was built on a lie? When the person you loved had been lying straight to your face? I need time to think. I muttered. Adam sighed. All right, I'll call you when I have something. I ended the call and sat there staring at my phone. Then slowly I turned to look at the hotel again, a few floors up. One of the lights flickered on, and for the first time, I felt nothing at all. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove aimlessly through the city, letting the streets blur together, my mind racing with thoughts I couldn't hold on to. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together. Her smile, the way she touched his arm, the easy familiarity between them. How long had this been going on? Had she ever loved me at all by the time I finally parked? Outside my house, the sun was already starting to rise. The soft glow of morning made everything look too normal, too peaceful. But nothing was normal anymore. I walked inside, my footsteps heavy against the hardwood floor. The house was quiet. And then I saw her. Lauren was asleep on the couch, curled up with a blanket, her phone resting loosely in her hand. She must have come home late. Too late to bother going upstairs for a moment. I just stood there watching her. She looked normal, like the woman I had spent years loving, like the woman who used to trace circles on my palm when she couldn't sleep, who used to steal my fries, even when she swore she wasn't hungry, but I knew better. Now I walked past her straight to the bedroom. I didn't wake her up. I didn't say a word. Because when she opened her eyes, she would have no idea that I had finally stopped being the fool in this story. And that was the part one was looking forward to the most. The moment she stirred awake, I was already at the kitchen table sipping my coffee, watching the morning unfold like it was any other day. Except it wasn't. I had the proof. Now the security footage, the check-in records, the undeniable reality of what my marriage had become. But I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to throw accusations that would give her too much power. No, I wanted her to feel it. The slow, creeping realization. The way the walls were about to close in, she stretched, rubbing sleep from her eyes. As she wandered into the kitchen mourning, she mumbled her voice. "G.R. Roy?" I took another sip of coffee, meeting her gaze. Late night. Something flickered across her face just for a second. The hesitation, the life forming before she even spoke. "Yeah," she said casually. "Got caught up at work. You know how it is." I knew exactly how it was. I nodded, setting my mug down. "Yeah, I do." She walked past me, grabbing a mug from the cabinet. I meant to ask, "Where were you last night?" My lips curved slightly just out. Her back stiffened ever so slightly, just enough for me to notice. She turned, smiling like nothing was wrong. "You should have texted me." I leaned back in my chair, watching her closely. "Funny, you didn't text me either." There it was again, that hesitation, the tiny slip in her expression. Before she forced it back into place, I let the silence stretch. Then I placed my phone on the table. "I saw you, Lauren." Her fingers tightened around the coffee mug. "I know." I continued, my voice. "Calm the tell, the check-in records, the security footage. I know everything." She didn't move, didn't breathe. Then slowly she exhaled. "Lyle, don't," I said sharply. She flinched. For the first time in this entire nightmare, I saw something in her eyes that I hadn't seen before. Fear. Good. I stood up, grabbing a folder from the counter and tossing it onto the table. Inside were printed copies of everything. Screenshots, receipts, timestamps. "I already filed for divorce," I said, my voice steady. "My lawyer has everything. You can keep the house for now. But your little fantasy with Carter?" I chuckled. "I hope it was worth it." She swallowed hard. I darting to the papers. "Lyle, please, I'm done." The words felt good, solid. I grabbed my keys, my bag, and walked to the door. She called after me, her voice cracking. But I didn't stop, because this time, I was the one leaving her behind. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free.